Steve, what a pleasure to see you here in Beijing again.
What a pleasure to see you.
Well, the latest deadline, according to some political agenda, is April the 2nd, in which tariffs are likely to be exerted to different economies coming from Washington's policy. Are you worried about China-U.S. relations deteriorating as a result?
President Trump has made it clear that April 2nd is going to be Liberation Day. So thinking about it, so it's Liberation Day, and he is going to be imposing reciprocal tariffs. It's not only on China, it's on all countries that maintain trade surpluses with the United States and are doing that in part through their taxation. So his staff is figuring out how to do that. We're seeing it may not be as broad as what was originally predicted. So originally we thought it was going to be on all goods. It may exempt some industrial goods, but this will be a real change in the way the global trade system works.
How sophisticated and mature do you think the China's approach these days, particularly since Trump 2.0, towards some of the latest measures and threats coming out of Washington on trade?
China is prepared for these tariffs. They don't want them. They hope that they can negotiate lower tariff rates or no tariff rates, but they are prepared. As you stimulate domestic consumption, that means the reliance on exports decreases. So as the reliance on exports decrease, then the trade surplus with the United States decreases. So that is to some degree a preparation. But this will not be...
And China has been doing businesses with Global South and many other countries.
Yes. So the percentage of trade with the United States has been steadily decreasing, but it still is very significant. So it will be, again, the Chinese government is saying, we prefer not to have these tariffs. We hope we can negotiate it, but if we get them, we're prepared.
How articulative do you think the Trump administration's approach so far in terms of trade policy?
Well, they have been clear on the tariffs. He was clear during the campaign. He's been clear since he was inaugurated. He has said that on April, he has had this date, April 2nd. What's so interesting about the Trump presidency is the transparency.
Having said that, though, short-term vis-a-vis long-term, what does the latest basket of policies coming out of Washington would mean for the United States?
My focus is on U.S. China relations. So, all these other policies are, they are fascinating. Again, I don't have to watch sports anymore in the United States. I just watch the news because it's absolutely enthralling. It's more interesting than watching the basketball games or the football games because it's just so interesting the way he is so transparent, and I listen to every word. So I think on China policy, I think tariffs, there will be tariffs, but we don't know what the percentage is. We don't know what goods are going to be tariffed. There are a lot of things that are going to come out, but China can start to decrease the trade surplus with the United States. So there was this memorandum that came out of the White House that seemed to want to restrict Chinese investment in the United States and U.S. investment in China. And the next day, President Trump says, I welcome job-creating investment by Chinese companies in the United States at a cabinet. So his whole cabinet is sitting there, and President Trump says that. So I suggest to Chinese companies, do like the Nike ad. Just do it. EVs. China produces great EVs, but they're going to be highly tariffed if they go to the United States. So should Chinese companies consider EV production in the United States? Well, they should talk. I think rather than talk, they should go and find a local government, make the investment, and say, we're investing $2 billion.
But there are Chinese EV companies investing in the United States over the years. And why do they move out? What about the local political climate? And what about the supply chains? All these are important questions to be answered by the government in which these businesses are locating their branches too.
See, people are too passive. They're looking at the difficulty in the U.S. China relationship and they're saying, I'm going to sit on my hands until I see what happens. And my message is, don't. You really have to do it. to the extent that the Chinese economy recovers, U.S. businesses want to be selling in the Chinese market, and they will start to increase their investment in China. What we heard from Premier Li was there is an understanding that consumption is an insufficient part of GDP, that they need federal, central government stimulus, and they're going to do that. And that should give U.S. companies some confidence that they should increase investment. But what we're not going to see is increased investment in China in order to export to the United States, because President Trump's tariffs are going to make sure that is not a feasible way.
What about this way, to threat with tariffs for others to take actions? Will this work for the long run? What about a basic level of trust and confidence among business players or between policymakers and foreign businesses? So how long do you see the current administration would have to prove its approach will work?
President Trump has majorities in the House and in the Senate. He had all of his cabinet confirmed. Right now, his political influence is really at the highest point. The House of Representatives is elected every 2 years. So November of next year, there will be an election. And if people are dissatisfied, the Republicans may lose their majority in either the Senate or the House. But again, the proof is in the pudding. We will see if these investments begin to materialize. Certainly the announcements have been terrific.
We saw the top leadership between China and the United States met, both during Trump 1.0 and then later the Biden administration. Now we are moving to the stage of Trump 2.0. Yeah. What do you think can be the mature conditions for both sides so that a top-level meeting in person could happen?
I think President Trump highly respects President Xi. He thinks he's a great leader. He has said that. I mean, look at his public statements. He's talked about that many times. When he feels the time is right, he and President Xi will meet, and they will set a framework for the U.S. China relationship. I don't know when that will be. My guess it's going to be not in the very far distance. It's fairly near. President Trump is currently, obviously we have an enormous amount that's going on domestically in the United States. We have President Trump trying to settle the war in Ukraine. We have the situation in Israel with Hamas, and President Trump is strongly backing Israel. So, and that is taking up an enormous amount of his time. So I think it's been he will focus on China at an appropriate time.
There needs to be different levels of talks and interactions among the government on both sides. How much do you see that is taking place right now?
Certainly the traditional channel between the Chinese embassy in Washington and the National Security Council is they're talking. I think the other, the Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of Commerce need to start having conversations with He Lifeng and with Wang Wentao and others, and those are not going on enough yet, but they will over time. I think when policies become clearer, I think the militaries need to make sure that they're having lots of contact so there's not an inadvertent misunderstanding. That would be terrible. So I think in the beginning of every administration in the United States, the contacts become more difficult, and then over time they regularize. And my hope is that will occur.
Some of the quote-unquote sensitive issues, such as artificial intelligence between China and the United States, but everybody understands that is the future.
My great hope is that we will find a way to cooperate on AI, that it's going to change the world. And we're going to need to set up a framework and rules for AI, and that's going to have to be done with China. And if that doesn't happen, it's going to have bad consequences for America, for China, and the world. The conversations have to be at all sorts of levels.
Yeah.
We need government, we need AI folks, we need businesses, we need the security people, we need all of these people to start having conversations, because the kind of the threat and the benefit of AI is actually the same for China as it is for the United States. So are we going to be able to cooperate? My hope is we can, because if we don't, it's a problem.
Communications between China and the United States, especially good quality communications. I know you have been a key person playing a key role while being the president of National Committee of U.S. China Relations. But what do you see as the challenges ahead, and how to address some of the already existing big problems you see?
Well, the first thing we need is discussions between President Xi and President Trump. Both governments have the number one leader making the decisions. So we need them to talk and set a framework. At the same time, we need businesses to be talking. We need more track two dialogue so we can have constructive suggestions to both countries. The National Committee runs 8 now. 8 track two dialogues on anything from digital economy to healthcare to macroeconomics to strategic. Yeah. And it's all with, everything that we do is bipartisan. So it has both Republicans and Democrats. And, we keep those channels of communication open. And, the government has always, the U.S. government has always been supportive of that. But you need these conversations at all different levels, and we need more conversations. And that will hopefully lead to better outcomes.
Now, I know you have been speaking out to both sides from where you are, but is it going to be contagious to the others, do you think?
You should always be true to yourself. Whatever you do, you should be true to yourself, because if you're not true to yourself, you'll get up in the morning and you won't feel good about yourself. So I've lived by that principle for my whole life, and I hope my friends and colleagues in both China and the United States live by that principle.
Steve Orlins, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Great to see you.